Hey guys, welcome or welcome back. Tisha here, back for another 50 years in polygamy chapter read. We're going to start with chapter 15. Do me a favor, like the video, it helps the channel. And if you have not done so already and you've been here more than once, go ahead and subscribe as I am on the road to 2,000 in the fam. Chapter 15, High School Angst. I was livid when my sister Francine talked mom into buying me some training bras. Most girls are really excited about getting a training bra, but okay. You can't act like a boy forever, Sophia, Francine scolded. You're going to become a woman someday, whether you like it or not. I hated my periods, my breast, and my slim girlish figure. The only feminine thing I liked about me was my beautiful long taffy-colored hair because it was so easy to manage. My tomboy life would have been especially grand if we had been allowed to wear Levi's or even slacks at school. There was absolutely nothing as confining as our torturous as having to run to and from school in a dress. If I was lucky, I might be offered a ride with one of my many aunts or uncles who drove their kids to and from school, but I really didn't mind the walk unless the weather was extremely bad. If they had space, I don't understand why this just wasn't a thing for, I don't know how far she lived, but how hard would it have been for you to scoop her up if it's something that was en route? One cold day after school, I tucked my boots inside and jacket and hurried away from the school. As I approached the sidewalk and began to run south on State Street towards home, I heard a male voice call me from the passenger side. Frank had rolled down the window. Get in out of the rain, Sophia. We'll give you a ride home. I leaned in the window. Valerie and her best friend from school, Ruthie, were in the back seat. Frank was Ruthie's girlfriend, was in the front seat next to the driver, a guy I'd never met. When I caught Valerie's eyes and saw the look she gave me, I knew what I should do. I wonder why that look. I wonder if the look was because she felt like something was going to happen to Sophia or something else. Let's see. When I caught Valerie's eyes, I knew what I should do. No thanks, I told Frank. I'll walk. Come on, Sophia. We have room. Get in now and Jay will take you home, won't you, Jay? Frank quickly pointed at me. Jay, this is Sophia. Then he pointed his finger at Jay. Sophia, this is Jay. Sure, I'll take you home, Jay said with a wide, friendly smile plastered across his face. The nervous look in Valerie's eyes let me know I had to somehow get out of accepting this ride home. Valerie didn't want to do with the incrimination by association. If her friends found out her friend Sophia lived in Pligville, and was a Plig kid, they'd be suspicious of her as well. It's so sad that that's something that you always got to worry about protecting, is the fact that you're polygamous because of the torment that you get at school or because of what it could do to your family. Oh, excuse me. Thanks anyways, Frank. I love running in the rain and I need the exercise, I said as convincingly as possible. You sure as hell don't, Frank said. Not in this weather. What you trying to do, be polite or something? Frank looked back at Val. Tell your friend to get in the car. It's okay. Val didn't say a word. She looked dumbfounded. Looking back at me, Frank said, we aren't going to kidnap you. For hell's sakes, get in out of that damn rain, Jay ordered. If Val would have lessons, she should have learned how to tell tall tales that would help her get out of this kind of fix, but she had never lived in Pligville. Neither of her dad's wives lived together in the same house or near each other, so she hadn't led much of a secret life. Fibs were designed for that very reason, to protect our families and gain a safety net of approval from neighbors and peers. This had always been a crucial aspect of our survival. Finally, Frank jumped out of the car, grabbed my books from my arms, and shoved me into the front seat next to Jay. Then Frank slid in next to me and slammed the door. I don't really like the fact that he did all of that, like trying to force her into the car. I get he had good intentions, but if she didn't want you to ride, she didn't want to ride with you, she didn't want to ride with you. There, he snapped. I guess we'll just have to kidnap you. Just take me over to Val's house, I told Jay. You're going there anyway, aren't you? Why? Why not just take you home? Frank asked me. Well, maybe Val and I can do our homework together. Frank turned around to look at Val. Didn't you say you had piano lessons today? Yeah, Val murmured. Frank interrupted. See, it's okay, Sophia. We really don't mind taking you. Right then, I thought Val was dumb as a doornail. I'd done everything I could think of to protect her secrets, but she wouldn't say a word. If I were her, I would have told them, yeah, bring Sophia over to my house after piano lessons. We can do our Spanish homework together. Whether that really happened or not wouldn't matter. Once the boys dropped me off at her house, her mother could have taken me home, or I could have just walked the extra miles. But then we were well on our way. Jay was asking for directions as I pointed and told him where to turn. I was still trying to figure out how to rescue Val and myself from total embarrassment. I could ask him to drop me off at a stranger's house and pretend it was mine. But what if the owner saw me and wondered who the heck was in their yard? Between every turn, I tried thinking of something. At one point, I said, just drop me off here and I'll walk the rest of the way home. Jay thought that was a stupid idea. I could have told him, I've got to stop at so and so's house, or so and so needs me here. But I didn't have a so and so's house to stop at. By the time we turned right on 5900 south onto 300 east, Frank was totally keyed up. You live this close to Pigville? Holy Toledo! I sure do, I said sternly. I couldn't protect Val's anonymity, and she hadn't helped a single bit. I live right next door to them. Sheesh, Jay said as he slowed way down. You do live right here in Pligville. Wow, doesn't that bother you, Sophia? Ruthie asked. Yes, I wanted to screech at her. Of course it bothers me. How do you think I felt all of my life and right at this minute while all of you act like we are some freaking monsters or something? Instead, I frowned and said sarcastically, yes. Excuse me. I'm scared to death they're going to kill me. Ruthie looked nervous. She didn't say another word as she stared fixedly out the window while I gave Jay the very last direction. Turn right here down this dirt driveway on your right. No way, Sophia, Frank yelled. You don't live down here. This is where all the bigwig polygamists live, where they have their meetings. Jay drove slowly down our long driveway, then asked solemnly, you're jiving with us, aren't you, Sophia? No, I'm not jiving with you. This is my bigwig dad's garage where he holds all of his polygamous meetings. Frank opened the door for me, looking quite distorted. He slid out of the car. Then I walked out. Other than a few uneasy goodbyes, no one said another word. I was sorry I let Val down. I felt sure she knew. She figured out how to explain our connection without implicating herself. And to my surprise, her free-loving wannabe hippie friends continued to be kind to me whenever I was around them. Okay, good. So at least they were still nice to her despite finding out that she was a polygamist. Gary told me he wanted to ask me something after our thespian club meet. Is it thespian or thespian? Y'all know. Club meeting was over. As other students were filing out, he sat down next to me. I'm sure this is a ridiculous question. He almost as nervous as I was. Am I more likely way too late to be asking you? As nice and pretty as you are, I'm sure you've already been asked, but if you haven't already said yes to someone else, will you consider going to the Christmas dance with me? Apparently, Gary didn't know yet I was a polygamous kid. Had he gone to Hillcrest Junior High with my peers, he would already know and gotten the lowdown about me. If anyone in his popular crowd had informed him, the poor guy would have known why I hadn't been asked. And if he wouldn't have bothered. To my astonishment, Dad gave Gary, an outsider, permission over the phone to take me to the Christmas dance. During our exceptionally good time at dinner and then the dance, I allowed a sense of normalcy to touch my heart. I pretended I was accepted, even semi-popular, and could be vibrant and outgoing around the crowd of kids I attended school with for most of my life. At home by the front door, Gary kissed my lips once, very softly. He asked me if he could take me out again sometime soon. My very foolish elation at Gary's kindness and his desire to date me was short-lived. Before I saw him the following Monday at school, one of his cronies handed down the necessary warnings. Gary didn't show up at the lunch table where we had planned to meet. He turned the other direction when he saw me in the hall and avoided me like the plague. I hate that so many of these kids are followers, and I'm reading this and I'm thinking back to myself, and I'm glad I wasn't one of them. For days on end, I felt remorseful, and an overwhelmingly self-conscious angst kept me from being fully functional. Gary never did speak to me again. In between my dates with Mark and Royce, I went out with a couple more Mormon guys from high school. Relationships that often ended in discrimination, rejection. One of James' friends told us both their LDS religion and their parents forbade them to associate with any polygamist. Things hadn't changed since I was a kid. On the other hand, my brother James warned all guys he didn't like or trust to keep clear away from his sister or he'd pound them. Then he introduced me to a few guys he approved of. There was a cake decorating contest to be held at the Valentine's Day dance. My sister Hannah helped me create the most beautiful cake I'd ever seen. We placed the Barbie doll inside of an outside down funnel cake to create her long flowing hoop skirt with a variety of brilliant Valentine shades of icing. We dressed her up from head to toe. It's funny she says that because I have a picture. I need to see if I could find it, of one of my birthdays where my mother made me the cake that they're describing. Because I used to love Barbies. Used to collect them. She had a lacy V-neck bodice and straps across her shoulders. Her elegant dress was complete with a matching umbrella in her hands. If any of the other girls had been required to put names on our cake entries, or if the judges had seen me with my cake, I wouldn't have had the slightest chance of winning. I asked my date, with whom James had lined me up, if we could get there early and if he would carry my cake to the table without me. As we glanced, I kept glancing toward the table where the cakes were on display. Everyone fussed and commented about my entry. The winner of the cake is contestant 32. Someone shouted across the gymnasium to all the hopeful contestants, whoever made number 32, please come down. When the crowd saw my date and I proudly approach the tables, hardly a soul clapped. Even though it cut to my core, I understood. Why did people... I don't have no chapstick here. Why do people have to be so cruel and so judgmental? It's not her fault that her family is polygamous. And even if this was something that she had chosen for herself or not, you can applaud. Be a good sport and show good sportsmanlike conduct where you applaud for whoever the winner is. Ugh. They couldn't applaud to show approval and acceptance of me. However, my handsome, gay, I found out years later, date smiled and proudly hugged me in front of everyone. Apparently, he knew exactly how it felt to be a misfit and an outcast. Later in my sophomore year, James introduced me to Brian. Her brother is really introducing her to a lot of guys. He wasn't a handsome guy, but shortly after we met, I realized I adored him. He was funny, kind, smart, and talented. Brian hung in there and remained my good friend for quite a while. I couldn't understand why until it occurred to me no one, including my brother James, had told him how notorious we were. Every day, I anxiously waited for him to abandon our friendship, and so many other boys and girls had done before. Surely someone would tell him. If not, he'd soon find it out. One evening, while Brian and I were sitting at Mom's kitchen table doing a project, Dad hiked up his stairs from Aunt Eleanor's, walked over to the sink where Mom was doing dishes, and planted several goodnight kisses on her neck. Though Mom loved it and giggled, she said, "Owen, stop it. The kids are in here." I was not one bit surprised, just angry when Aunt Eleanor was right behind him, leering over the banister. Her limitless reasons an excuse to invade my mother's space would never end. If they ever did, she'd invent some more of them. Though Dad had surely said goodnight to her before heading up to Aunt Marianne's house, she had another reason to butt into my mother's few seconds. Instead of expressing her lame reason for following him up the stairs, she saw him kiss Mom. So right in front of Byron, Aunt Eleanor smooched Dad's lips while she gently pinched his rear. Just had to tell you goodbye, my darling, she cooed. And he doesn't think that there's anything wrong with what Eleanor does. Her dad doesn't, even though this is what we're doing, not only in front of your other wife and the other kid, but while there's a guest there. It's too much. Brian looked shocked at Aunt Elle's display of affection and her comment to her supposed brother. While Mom and I were miffed, I wanted to slap the ignorance and callousness right out of her. Didn't you tell me your aunt was your dad's sister? Brian asked when we were alone. Yeah, that's what I told you, I said in frustration. I saw hurt and confusion creep over his face. I need to get him out of my life now, today, I decided. The longer he doesn't know about us, the longer it will extend my anxiety and prolong his most certain abandonment of me. He has a right to know the truth, so he won't be hurt and angry longer than necessary. I'll tell him and get it over with for both of us once and for all. On our back patio, I interrupted the pleasant sound of Brian's guitar strumming. All right, here goes, Brian, I blurted out after working up the courage. I've been meaning to explain something to you for quite some time now. Poor Brian. The sadness in his eyes touched my heart. It would have been easier to have him walk out on our friendship like I was so accustomed to. Brian swore he never heard of polygamy before. Maybe an insignificant word or two somewhere in the Bible, he claimed. I thought he was lying and playing games with me because he didn't know how else to discuss the subject. It started with the Mormons. The prophet Joseph started it all. Don't you know your history? I said in a grouchy voice, disliking my insolence. You'll figure it out, and then you'll need to dump our friendship. But that's okay, Brian. Everyone else on the outside has, so you can too. I was shocked when he didn't grab his guitar, shove it in the case, and take off. Instead, he sat down next to me on the patio bench and said, whatever it is or isn't, whatever I find out, I promise that I will not abandon our friendship. I promise you, Sophia. Wow. I hope he sticks to it because she needed that. My heart told me he was telling the truth, at least for a while. After sacrament meeting, Dad called me into his office, which was in Aunt Eleanor's bedroom. I sat on the edge of her bed and watched a tender smile spread across his face. He chuckled and said, in the past few weeks, at least a dozen of men have asked me if they can court you. You're a beauty, Sophia, and they know it. Then he added solemnly, sometimes that worries me. Anyway, my darling daughter, since you are now 16, you are 16, aren't you? I nodded. Well, you can tell these guys no, or you can tell them yes if you want to get to know any one of them and their wives. I don't want to talk to them all, Dad. Please tell them no as soon as they ask you, I said. I'm not interested in marrying an older man. Okay, I'll do that for you, honey, he said. But there are 3 of these men I have a lot of respect for, and I'd like you to prayerfully consider each one of them before you give them an answer. Okay, my answer to Dad was absolutely no, since I wasn't at all interested in any of them. Plus, there was no sense in praying about anyone anymore. I didn't trust I'd know today, tomorrow, next week, or ever who the right guy was. I began to believe I must not have a covenant mate or a predestined commitment to any man, and that's why God hadn't given me a profound answer. Our hayride parties were some of my most cherished times. At the riding stables in Draper City, the owner hitched up 2 of his horses to a flatbed trailer, piled it with straw, and a bunch of delirious, happy young people took off. Some talked, some made out, some laughed, some sang, and some of the independents drank. The driver drove us a couple of miles into the foothills on a narrow, bumpy dirt road winding in and out of sagebrush and scrub oak. Then we had to head back. Our excursions were always too short and ended far too soon. Afterward, most of us would gather around the fire pit to roast hot dogs and marshmallows. Merrill, an independent polygamous man who'd recently married my brother, Charles' sweetheart, as his second wife while he was still in Vietnam, was drunk again. As the evening passed by, he started in on another of crude tirades. Y'all, sorry, I'm real tongue-tied. I think I need to stop at this chapter. So there you are, Miss Sophia Allred, one of Rulon Allred's nieces. I'm talking about that damn bastard who thinks he's high and mighty God. Well, he can kiss my ass and go straight to hell as far as I give a damn. Shut up, Merrill, his first wife scolded. Stop it right now. Stop being so rude. Do you think I give a damn if she hears me? Merrill thudded back at her. I moved closer to the fire pit and to Merrill to let him know I could hear him. Do you hear me, huh? Miss Sophia Allred. Well, the way I figure it is, you should know your Uncle Rulon is nothing but a good-for-nothing bastard. Merrill kept on with his rudeness, so I stepped in front of him and said, shut your mouth right now. The more everyone told him to knock it off and shut up was the more he laughed and carried on. It was evident that he enjoyed offending me. I was so infuriated, I wanted to literally punch his lights out. Just as I swung at him, Royce grabbed around my arms and carried me 10 or 15 feet away. She was ready to get him. Put me down. Let me knock the crap out of him, I hollered. If my brothers were here, they would do it. Leave me alone. Put me down. Merle snickered. Listen to me, Sophia, Royce said. Calm down and listen. Merle may be drunk and fallen on his ass, but he can and will knock you out with one punch if you get near him. And in his state of mind, he'd think nothing of it. Yeah, put her down, Royce. Let her come after me. Come on, little Sophia. All right. Merrill continued to taunt. Someone needs to kick that rotten Allred blood right out of your head. Merrill staggered up from his folding chair and stumbled toward me. Royce hauled me into the parking lot. He pushed me into his car, got in, and slammed the door. I was still furious and bawling. Sophia, calm down. He's been like this for as long as he is shallow, and that's been forever. So don't let him get to you. Just let it go. I stayed in the car to compose myself. My eyes were again open to the hatred and the prejudices men outside the Allred group carried toward my uncle's position and Joseph Mercer. More than 60 years after the split, grudges, hate, and contentment were still raging on. After a while, I joined some of the crowd who were farther from the fire pit. Then Mark took my hand and asked me to walk across the road and down the gully with him. She getting hit left and right from these two guys, but I like that Royce was there to protect her in that instance, and apparently Mark is now here too to also jump in. When we sat down on the cold earth, he reminded me again of his deep love for me. He said he knew without a doubt we were meant for each other, and we made covenants in the pre-existence to be together on this earth. I told him how sorry I was. I still didn't know or feel the same way, and he needed to give up on me before I hurt him even more. For the longest time, Mark still sat. He was heartbroken and fuming. Feeling responsible for his anguish, I sobbed. Then he suddenly jumped up angrily, grabbed my arm, and pulled me up the hill while I fought with him to leave me alone. I'm going to take you home, he snarled at me. I don't want to go home now, I shouted. No matter what I did or said, Mark insisted. He'd taken me to the party, so it was his obligation to make sure I got home, whether I liked it or not. I knew he was masking his disappointment in tears by acting outraged. I wept in anger, remorse, and fear while he recklessly sped home. That was her red flag. Because I can't remember which one of them that she married. But Mark is a walking red flag to me in this instance. There's a way to get me to come home without you being physically aggressive with me. During the past few years, between my breaking up and getting back with Royce, he'd taken me to my junior prom at the Capitol building, to the notorious Heidelberg restaurant, and to the elegant Hotel Utah restaurant, all while hoping he'd win my heart and my hand in marriage. To others, it probably looked like I had done nothing but use his and other men's love and admiration to fill my emptiness, to find some solitude, and to have a reason for being. I felt like such a despicable person. Whenever she does anything for herself without preventing herself from doing certain things because she's worried about others, she does this. And I feel like she should have just been able to just be. When I broke up with Royce for the very last and final time, he still insisted he would always love me, and I was making a terrible mistake, one I'd someday regret. Sometime that autumn, Aunt Marianne packed up and left Dad for a DJ she allegedly been carrying on with. Rick went with his mother. Dad divided his and Mary Ann's 4 other children between his 3 remaining wives. The space I had so longed for, and the bedroom I finally had all to myself for at least 6 months, I gratefully shared my gracious sister Jolie. Soon after Aunt Marianne left, horrendous things came to the attention of Dad's 3 wives who had custody of Marianne's kids. At last, and way too late, they realized Rick had been sexually abusing them for years. Did I not say in a previous chapter that this was being probably done to the same girl she was laying in bed and snickering with and giggling with, because he was too comfortable doing the acts that he was doing, performing the way that he was performing, isolating her the way that he was isolating her, saying the things that he was saying. The fact that he went into a room where the other little girls were, and he decided while she was laying in the bed with them to fondle her, all allowed me to feel like that this had happened before. And here we are finding out that he was doing this too to them. Dad and his wives felt Rick was the reason for our youngest sister's self-exploration and promiscuity. So many times they had begged Rick to stop, but he never did. He beat them up, say he was sorry, or threatened to harm another sibling if they told. He made sure his siblings felt just as responsible as he was for his disgusting behaviors and any repercussions if they were ever caught. The few times any of the kids tried to tell their mother Rick was abusing them, she would vehemently deny their allegations and exonerate him. So this makes it even worse, because it was known that something was going on, and rather than believing her children and what they were saying, she would tell them that it didn't happen. See, y'all, you gotta, and I understand that sometimes what children say are unfounded, but you have to believe them. Believe them first when they tell you that they've been SA'd, because it takes so much courage to speak out and to tell you, especially when the perpetrator is putting all this fear in them. The least that you can do is hear them out, and you may not believe them, but listen to them and be there for them. Because I'm not saying people don't make this up, but to that degree, and for it to be multiple kids telling you this, and rather than taking it and really looking into it, instead what you do is you defend the perpetrator. After listening to Rick's versions, Dad chose to pass their claims off as children's vivid imaginations or childhood curiosity. So the dad did the same exact thing. The dad didn't protect them either. This is some mess, yo. When I heard just a smidgen of what had happened to my siblings, I fell into deep depression for weeks. I was sure I was responsible and would be held accountable for their anguish. No, it's not your fault. It's his fault. And it's his mama's fault. And it's your father's fault. Because, and I was trying, y'all know, I tried not to blame them early on. But once you know, and rather than looking into it and doing something to save these kids, you're at fault. If only I had been strong and brave enough to tell my parents what was going on with him, it may have put a stop to the abuse. It's not your fault. I hope she realizes now it's not her fault. 3 of my siblings would have not had to endure Rick's torture and suffer the terrible wounds and memories. As usual, while in remorse, I sank to the bottom of my bed and tried to hide my shame under the heavy, suffocating covers as I lay in the dark. I was the closest I could get myself to purgatory's fire and brimstone. I needed to be right there. I need to be right then and maybe forever. No, you don't. I read that wrong. I needed to be right there and maybe forever. You don't need to be right there. And I hoped I would never, ever see Rick's face again. And that's the end of chapter 15. I think it's really messed up that this young girl has put so much blame on herself. I think it's really jacked up that the parents heard this and they didn't do anything to rectify the situation. I think that it's sad that because of how much she was tormented, that she even had to worry about getting a ride home from school when it was pouring outside and it was cold. You rather be cold than allow people to know where you live. It's sad. She went through a lot, and I look forward to more chapters of her actually getting joy. I don't know when that will be. Thanks for sticking with me. Until next time.